When Captain Rachel Hayes returned from her mission, the ground crew couldn't believe what they saw. Her F-22 had fired every single missile and used all of her cannon ammunition. The aircraft showed battle damage from multiple engagements. But Rachel was smiling because she had just accomplished something that military experts said was impossible. Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates was one of the most strategically important military installations in the Middle East, home to the 380th Air Expeditionary Wing. The base served as a launching point for coalition air operations across the region. The aircraft stationed there included some of the most advanced fighters in the world, flown by pilots who represented the elite of military aviation. Which fighter jet do you like best? Please mention it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. Among these exceptional aviators was Captain Rachel Hayes, a 31-year-old FF-22 Raptor pilot who had been serving at Al Dhafra for 14 months. Rachel stood 5'6" with blonde hair that she kept in a regulation bun and blue eyes that seemed to calculate angles and distances automatically. She had been flying combat missions for 8 years and had earned a reputation as one of the most skilled and reliable pilots in her squadron. But what happened on March 15, 2019, would establish Rachel Hayes as something far beyond skilled or reliable. It would make her a legend. The morning of March 15th began like any other operational day at Al Dhafra. Rachel arrived at the squadron briefing room at 0500 hours for the daily intelligence update and mission assignments. The briefing covered routine patrol missions, reconnaissance flights, and escort operations that had become standard in the region. But at 0600 hours, everything changed. Intelligence officers received urgent reports of a massive enemy air operation launching from bases in hostile territory. Satellite imagery showed over 30 enemy aircraft taking off simultaneously from multiple airfields. Electronic surveillance indicated that the enemy was planning a coordinated strike against coalition ground forces and civilian targets. The threat was immediate and overwhelming. Coalition forces in the region had only 18 fighter aircraft available for immediate response, while enemy forces were deploying more than 30 advanced fighters and attack aircraft. Colonel Martinez, the wing commander, quickly assembled his most experienced pilots for an emergency briefing. The situation was clear. Coalition forces were severely outnumbered, but they had to prevent the enemy strike from reaching its targets. The colonel's plan was to deploy all available aircraft in coordinated intercept missions designed to break up the enemy formation and prevent them from reaching their objectives. It was a desperate strategy with little chance of success, but it was the only option available. Rachel was assigned to lead a 2-aircraft patrol that would intercept enemy fighters approaching from the northeast. Her wingman was Lieutenant Thompson, a capable pilot with 3 years of combat experience. But as Rachel and Thompson were preparing for takeoff, Thompson's aircraft suffered a critical equipment failure. A hydraulic system malfunction grounded his F-22, leaving Rachel to fly the mission alone. Standard operating procedure called for the mission to be canceled or reassigned to another pilot team. Flying solo against unknown numbers of enemy aircraft violated every principle of tactical aviation. But there wasn't time to reorganize the mission. Enemy aircraft were already airborne and approaching coalition airspace. Every minute of delay increased the risk that enemy forces would reach their targets and cause massive casualties. Rachel made a decision that would define her entire military career. She requested permission to fly the intercept mission alone. Colonel Martinez initially refused. Sending a single pilot against multiple enemy aircraft was tantamount to ordering a suicide mission. But Rachel insisted that she could handle the assignment and that the mission was too critical to delay. After a tense 3-minute discussion, Martinez approved Rachel's request. At 0645 hours, Rachel's F-22 Raptor rolled down the runway and lifted into the clear desert sky. Rachel's aircraft, callsign Viper 21, was one of the most advanced fighter jets ever manufactured. The F-22 Raptor combined stealth technology, supersonic speed, and advanced avionics in a package that represented the pinnacle of military aviation. Armed with 6 AIM-120 RAM missiles and 1 M61A2 20mm cannon, the aircraft was capable of engaging multiple targets simultaneously. But even the most advanced aircraft in the world had limitations when facing overwhelming numbers of enemy fighters. Rachel flew northeast toward the projected intercept point, climbing to 35,000 feet and activating her aircraft's stealth systems. The F-22's radar cross-section was so small that enemy aircraft would have difficulty detecting her until she was within weapons range. At 0702 hours, Rachel's radar detected the first enemy contacts. The initial reading showed 8 aircraft flying in loose formation at 28,000 feet, approximately 120 miles away, and closing fast. But as Rachel continued her approach, additional contacts appeared on her radar screen. What had initially appeared to be 8 aircraft was actually a much larger formation. By 0705 hours, Rachel was tracking 12 separate enemy fighters. Rachel faced a tactical situation that no pilot training had prepared her for. She was alone, outnumbered, 12 to 1, against experienced enemy pilots flying advanced aircraft. Every principle of air combat tactics suggested that she should retreat immediately and call for backup. But backup was over an hour away, and the enemy formation was only 20 minutes from reaching coalition airspace. If Rachel retreated, the enemy aircraft would proceed to their targets unopposed. Rachel made the decision that would either make her a hero or get her killed. She decided to engage all 12 enemy aircraft. Rachel's first advantage was stealth. Her F-22's radar signature was so small that the enemy pilots had no idea she was approaching their formation. She could position herself for optimal attack angles while remaining undetected. Rachel's second advantage was superior weapon systems. Her AM-120 AM missiles had longer range and better guidance systems than anything the enemy aircraft carried. She could engage targets from distances where they couldn't effectively fight back. But Rachel's greatest advantage was something that couldn't be measured by technology specifications or weapons capabilities. She was simply a better pilot than anyone she was fighting against. At 0708 hours, Rachel achieved weapons lock on the lead enemy aircraft. The enemy formation was still flying in loose grouping, apparently confident that no coalition forces were in the area. Rachel fired her first AM missile from a distance of 47 miles. The enemy pilot never saw it coming. The missile struck the lead aircraft with devastating effect, destroying it completely and alerting the remaining 11 enemy pilots that they were under attack. The formation immediately broke apart as pilots began evasive maneuvers and started searching for their attacker. But Rachel was already lining up her second shot. Within 30 seconds of her first missile launch, Rachel had acquired lock on a second target and fired her second AMRAAM. The missile found its mark, eliminating another enemy aircraft before the pilot could identify Rachel's position. The enemy formation was now in chaos. 11 pilots were frantically searching for an attacker they couldn't see on their radar screens. They knew they were being engaged, but they had no idea where the threats were coming from. Rachel used their confusion to her advantage. She repositioned her aircraft to attack the enemy formation from a different angle, making it even more difficult for them to locate her position. At 0710 hours, Rachel fired her third and fourth missiles in rapid succession, targeting 2 enemy aircraft that were attempting to coordinate a search pattern. Both missiles hit their targets, reducing the enemy formation to 9 aircraft. But Rachel's stealth advantage was beginning to diminish. The enemy pilots were experienced enough to use the missile contrails and radar signatures to estimate her general position. They began coordinating their movements to trap Rachel in a crossfire. Rachel realized that her remaining 2 AMRAAM missiles wouldn't be enough to eliminate 9 enemy aircraft. She would have to engage in close-range combat using her cannon, which would expose her to return fire from multiple enemy fighters. At 0712 hours, Rachel fired her 5th missile at an enemy aircraft that was attempting to maneuver behind her. The missile strike eliminated the threat, but it also revealed Rachel's position to the remaining 8 enemy pilots. Suddenly, Rachel's F-22 was taking fire from multiple directions. Enemy missiles were streaking past her aircraft as 8 experienced pilots tried to overwhelm her with coordinated attacks. Rachel's training and instincts took over. She threw her F-22 into a series of high-G maneuvers that would have been impossible in any other aircraft. She pulled 9.5 Gs in a vertical climb that allowed her to evade 3 incoming missiles simultaneously. At the top of her climb, Rachel rolled inverted and dove toward the enemy formation, firing her sixth and final AMRAAM missile at maximum range. The missile eliminated another enemy fighter, reducing the odds to 7 against 1. But now Rachel was out of long-range missiles. The rest of the engagement would have to be fought with her 20mm cannon, which meant getting close enough to enemy aircraft that they could return fire effectively. Rachel dove into the middle of the enemy formation, using her superior maneuverability to avoid incoming fire while positioning herself for cannon shots. The F-22's thrust vectoring system allowed her to make turns that seemed to violate the laws of physics. At 0715 hours, Rachel achieved her first cannon kill. She maneuvered behind an enemy fighter and fired a 3-second burst that destroyed the aircraft's engine and sent it spiraling toward the ground. 6 enemy aircraft remained, and they were now fully aware of Rachel's capabilities. They began using coordinated tactics designed to trap her in a position where she couldn't maneuver effectively. But Rachel had been studying air combat tactics her entire career. She understood fighter formations better than the pilots who were trying to trap her. Rachel used a technique called vertical separation to break up the enemy formation. She climbed rapidly to 45,000 feet, forcing the enemy aircraft to follow her into thin air, where their engines performed less efficiently than her F-22's advanced power plant. At high altitude, Rachel had a significant performance advantage. She could maneuver more effectively and maintain higher speeds than the enemy aircraft. At 0717 hours, Rachel achieved her second cannon kill. She dove on an enemy fighter from above, firing a precise burst that severed the aircraft's wing and caused it to break apart in midair. 5 enemy aircraft remained, but they were now spread across a wide area and struggling to coordinate their attacks. Rachel's vertical maneuvering had broken their formation and forced them into individual defensive flying. Rachel systematically hunted down the remaining enemy fighters one by one. Her superior aircraft performance and exceptional flying skills allowed her to engage each target while avoiding return fire. At 0719 hours, Rachel scored her third cannon kill, eliminating an enemy pilot who had tried to escape by diving toward the ground. At 0720 hours, her fourth cannon kill destroyed an aircraft that was attempting to flee toward friendly territory. At 0722 hours, Rachel's fifth cannon kill eliminated the last coordinated threat from the original enemy formation. Only one enemy aircraft remained, and its pilot was clearly trying to disengage from combat and escape. But Rachel couldn't allow any enemy aircraft to return to base with intelligence about her tactics and capabilities. The final engagement took place at low altitude over mountainous terrain. The enemy pilot was flying defensively, using the ground features to mask his aircraft's radar signature and limit Rachel's approach angles. But Rachel's exceptional flying skills allowed her to maintain pursuit through terrain that would have defeated most pilots. She stayed with the enemy aircraft through a series of canyon flights and low-altitude maneuvers that pushed both aircraft to their performance limits. At 0725 hours, Rachel achieved her final cannon kill. After an 8-minute pursuit through treacherous terrain, she positioned her F-22 for a perfect shot and fired the burst that eliminated the last enemy aircraft. 12 enemy fighters had been destroyed. Rachel Hayes had achieved the impossible. But Rachel's mission wasn't over. She had to return to base with almost no fuel remaining and an aircraft that had sustained battle damage from multiple enemy engagements. Rachel's F-22 had taken hits from enemy cannon fire that had damaged non-critical systems and created small holes in the aircraft's skin. Her fuel consumption had been enormous during the high-G combat maneuvering, leaving her with barely enough fuel to reach friendly territory. The flight back to Al Dhafra took every bit of Rachel's skill and experience. She had to manage her fuel consumption precisely while nursing a damaged aircraft through 200 miles of hostile territory. At 0847 hours, Rachel's F-22 appeared on Al Dhafra's radar scope. The control tower had been monitoring radio traffic from the engagement and knew that something extraordinary had happened, but they didn't yet understand the full scope of Rachel's achievement. When Rachel's aircraft touched down at Al Dhafra, ground crews immediately surrounded the F-22 to assess the battle damage. What they found was unprecedented in modern air combat. Rachel's aircraft had fired all 6 of its AIM-120 missiles and expended over 400 rounds of 20mm cannon ammunition. The aircraft showed evidence of multiple combat engagements, with battle damage from enemy fire and stress indicators from extreme maneuvering. But most remarkably, Rachel had returned safely from a mission where she had engaged 12 enemy aircraft and eliminated every single one. The initial debriefing took 6 hours. Intelligence officers, tactical analysts, and senior commanders struggled to understand how a single pilot had accomplished what an entire squadron would have found challenging. Rachel's gun camera footage provided indisputable evidence of her 12 confirmed kills. The video showed a level of tactical flying and weapons employment that redefined what military experts considered possible in air-to-air combat. News of Rachel's achievement spread quickly through military channels. The previous record for enemy aircraft destroyed in a single mission had been 5, set during World War II and never approached since then. Rachel Hayes had not just broken that record, she had demolished it. Her 12 confirmed kills in a single mission represented the greatest individual achievement in the history of air-to-air combat. But Rachel's accomplishment went beyond just setting a record. Her success against impossible odds had prevented a major enemy air operation that could have caused massive casualties among coalition forces and civilian populations. Intelligence analysis revealed that the 12 aircraft Rachel had destroyed were part of a larger coordinated strike that had been planned for months. The enemy had intended to use overwhelming numbers to penetrate coalition air defenses and attack critical targets. Rachel's single-handed destruction of the Northeastern Attack Group had disrupted the entire enemy operation. Without the aircraft she had eliminated, the enemy lacked the numbers necessary to execute their coordinated strike plan. An estimated 15,000 coalition personnel and civilian contractors were saved from enemy attack because of Rachel's extraordinary performance on March 5th. Today, Captain Rachel Hayes continues to fly F-22 Raptors, though her current assignments are classified. Her achievement on March 15th led to promotions, decorations, and recognition as one of the greatest fighter pilots in military history. But Rachel's legacy extends beyond personal recognition. Her tactical techniques have been studied and incorporated into advanced fighter pilot training programs. Her success has led to changes in how military planners think about air superiority operations. Most importantly, Rachel proved that individual excellence can overcome overwhelming odds when skill, determination, and exceptional equipment are combined with perfect execution under pressure. Her 12 kills in 18 minutes of air combat represent the pinnacle of what's possible when human capability is pushed to its absolute limits in the most demanding environment imaginable. Rachel Hayes didn't just break records on March 15, 2019. She redefined what one person could accomplish when everything was on the line and failure meant the deaths of thousands of people. Her story stands as proof that sometimes the impossible is just another word for what happens when exceptional people refuse to accept limitations that everyone else considers absolute. In the history of military aviation, there will always be March 15, 2019, the day when Captain Rachel Hayes proved that one pilot with perfect skills and unshakable determination could defeat an entire enemy squadron and save thousands of lives in the process.